Good afternoon, it's Michael here from Michael's Card Art, and welcome from a very warm sunny afternoon here in Melbourne, Australia. I've just finished work for the day. I look after elderly people in their homes as a carer, and what I wanted to do this afternoon, I posted a couple of images on the various card making sites that I'm a member of, and I got a lot of requests for how did you colour those flowers, or what's the technique you use when you're colouring flowers. So for example, this is one of the cards that I posted just recently, and you can see the graduated tone that is coming through on this. Now, seasoned crafters will know what I'm banging on about here, but as a novice, I used to look at these cards up until 12 months ago, and I'd go, wow, that is just amazing. How did you get that colour? And here's another example of where we've got variation of or graduation of colour in leaves and flowers. These are the same flowers, believe it or not, but you can see that they're different colours, and they're in a different setting as well. Here's another example of flowers. So in this case, they've just been coloured in the centre. It's a white cardstock, and I've tipped the edges with the centre colour to give you a slightly different look and feel. So I used to look at these and go, how did they do that? And I could not find on the YouTube channel or the other places that I was using to learn my skills. I couldn't really find or didn't know what to look for. So what I'm going to do over the next couple of days is create some videos that are short grabs of colouring techniques that I use when I'm creating a card. You will notice that some of my cards do have solid colour in the various elements, but it's rare. This is probably an example of where I've got a solid colour, but I didn't colour this using one of our alcohol markers or water markers and colour like this. I didn't do that. I tend to colour, and I will admit here and now, I'm not a great blending watercolour colorist, if you like. There's a couple of very good Facebook sites that you might want to go to. I think it's Blends and Beyond. You might want to have a look at that site if you want to learn how to use or learn great colouring techniques with a marker. So you'd get all this graduation. I don't have the patience to be able to do that, but Blends and Beyond is one site that I would recommend you have a little sticky beak at to see if you want to learn how to do good colouring techniques with a marker. But what I do is I will use the same colouring, use the same colour, but instead I will use a dauber or a blending brush as my colouring instruments rather than the markers. That's just because that's the way I am. So bear that in mind. So what I'm going to teach you is how to colour with a dauber and a blending brush. I'm also going to show you how to use various other elements, for example, embossing powder, how to bring embossing powder into your piece of work. Now here's an example of, let me just clear the deck for these. Here's an example of where I've used embossing powder. On this one here, you can see I've coloured the flowers with using various colouring techniques with the dauber, and then I finished it off with some embossing powder, and then I've heat embossed that to give you that nice glossy show there. You'll also see here the paintwork on the background is probably considered to be a bit messy by some, but you can see there I didn't use a blending brush or a dauber for that. I've used a spritzer, so we'll look at that technique as well. Something else you might be a little intrigued by. This card here is a very simple card. It employs watercolor paper, as opposed to this card, which is white cardstock. I'll come back and talk about this technique shortly, but this one here, you might be able to see in the background, you might be able to see mountains. This is the darker green. These mountains are coming up and they're being met by a yellow cloud. That there is done, that colouring is done with a blending brush and a piece of torn paper, and I'll show you that technique as well. Here's another example where I've employed embossing powder. See this, what do we call it, element. I've coloured it using a brown, if you like, or a grey, smoky grey, I think it is. And then what I've done, can you see the bits of gold embossing powder shining through there? So what I've done is I've coloured that, but not all of it, and I've heat embossed just certain parts of this object so that it has a sense of age or maturity to it. The background here, how did I get that? Well, that is plain paper that I have coloured myself using tea bags, onion skins, avocado peels, etc. I tend to do that in big batches, and then I'll use that paper as my background. And you'll see here you've got various urns and containers. We're going to show you the colouring technique I employ for that. And how did I get this fine, sharp line in the colouring of this? Well, let me tell you, this here is simply Designer Series paper, and I've cut it using my various dies, and in that case I cut it with an oval die. I just place it on this object and cut it there, place it on the same object with that, and cut that one, and so then they just slide in together. So we'll show you how those work. Another one on embossing powder, just let me very quickly show you this one. This is vellum. This glass jar is vellum, and what I've done is I've cut it out using the die, and then I've with Versamark ink I've stamped it and dipped it into gold embossing powder and then heated it so that it becomes a solid form on the vellum jar. And then I've got these various flowers coming out of that. The background you can see is there's embossing, white embossing powder, and here we've got a myriad of colours coming through, and I'll show you an application for how I did those. And the flowers here you can see have got white embossed writing on them inside the slightly daubed centre, like that, and the edges I've rolled those in the ink pad to give you that look. Anyway, so there are some of the things that I'll cover off in this session on colouring. A couple of the background things you'll see here. This is the same. Where is it? I just put it down. Right, I don't know where I put it now. Oh, silly me. Anyway, this is still the plain cardstock. This is the vellum that I spoke about before with the gold embossing. You'll see here white cardstock, a brown card, it's like a copper coloured cardstock, and you can see the gold embossing just in there. How did I get that in there and heat emboss that? So that's we'll cover that off. And see this background here, gorgeous, gorgeous, like a French paint on the walls that you'd see in some large estates. Well, there's a stamp. There's a stamp actually, or part of a stamp set that you might want to hunt down. It is a retired stamp set from Stampin' Up, but it's worth its weight in gold. It really is, because you get these beautiful patterns in the background. All right, so this session is going to be how to colour flowers and what application. So subsequent ones will be around. Oh, before I go on with it, I really wanted to show you this, because I think this illustrates further the using different techniques on different elements. So this is watercolor paper, this is cardstock, and this beautiful little background, if I may say, is linen card. And this gives you a totally different look and feel. I'll show you a couple of other linen cards that I've done. I love this material. I love working in it. You can see here, look at that shading and toning there. And the other thing I want to draw your attention to are the urns. Look at the colouring that we've done in there. We've created, I think, a true sense of age, and we've got the light coming in on this angle, and we've just done that with a dauber. to give you that technique. And look at this one here. This one looks like the mineral salts are coming through the pot with age and a little bit of dilapidation. But that simply is linen stock, linen card, with this cutout urn that has been coloured with the technique I'm going to show you. And this here, the bamboo, has just been stamped onto the linen to give you an effect that that's a pot of bamboo sitting on, or sitting in the foreground. So they're the sort of things that I want to cover off. I'll do this one in a different program. But there'll probably be about 5 different programs on colouring and techniques and things like that. One might be called colouring using watercolour paper. Another one, colouring techniques using linen card. And look at this one. Look at those gorgeous contrasting colours in there to suit the background and what we've got in the foreground, and we've got some stamping of grasses there. So I don't expect that I'm going to teach hardened crafters, and I'm putting myself in that category now, anything new. There might be a couple of techniques in that they might pick up, but this is really designed at those beginners who are starting out in this journey of crafting. And look, I think, 12 months ago, if you had have told me I was going to be making greeting cards, I really would have probably spat my coffee out and chuckled all the way to the bathroom as I choked and coughed myself. However, I'm hooked on this hobby. I really am. Here's another example of linen. I'm going to show you that. But you can see here, this card was made about 4 months ago, and it's part of a series of dioramas that I did. And all it is a die cut that cuts out this lake scene, if you like. It looks like an old card, but that's partly due to the fact that I've burnt it with a lighter. I've burnished it, I've spilt ink on it, and I've also written on it. And this linen cardstock has stood the test of a short period of time to give you a look that looks like a vintage card. So we're going to explore some of that as well. Anyway, but today is about colouring flowers and leaves using watercolour paper and some applications. So let me move that out of the road for you and get myself a little organised. And I've got a raft of cutouts that I can use. Now I've taken the liberty to cut some of these out again. We've got some leaves here we're going to use. And I've also got for us some autumnal characters that I'd like to show you how I colour those up. And I can give you an example of those once I find examples of the cards. So we've got those. We're going to do flowers and leaves and an application on watercolour paper. And what I'm going to do with that is we'll walk away with a card. Oh, I did have it here as an example. Just bear with me a moment. Sorry, I was organised until I started pulling out all those cards. Here it is here. I'm going to show you how to create this sort of look and feel. That's right, Michael, you've now dropped it on the floor. Okay, here we go. And I'm going to show you the die set that I've used and the application for it, because this stamp and die set, I've had it for over, well, let's say it's a year, and I've only just learned how to use it properly. And such is my nature. I look at something with an example done in it, and I think, oh, great, I'll buy that. And then I get it, and I go, oh, I'm not sure I know how to use that. So I'll take some of the mystery out of that, and you'll see, this edging and cutting and decoration come to play. So we're going to make one of those for you today. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now I'm just going to pause this for a moment and I'll be straight back to you. Okay, I'm back. In that short period of time, I quickly went to grab something and I thought, no, I won't show them. I won't do this card I won't do this technique with the solid flowers on this video. I'll leave that for when, and I'll show you how to do, or how I color these flowers to make something of this nature, where we've got some designer series paper and we're creating a vintage style greeting card, if you like, with its stitching and red cotton, and we'll burnish the edges, and I'll show you how to make the placement in such a way that it creates an interesting retro style card. So we'll leave that until then. So that'll be in a subsequent video, whether it's the next one or the one after, I'm not sure. But what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you colouring of these leaves to give us an image that we can place onto some watercolour paper using this stamp and die set, and also creating a sense of a scene, or an autumnal scene actually. Now, measurements, and this is my biggest bugbear, but I will tell you, all of my cards are generally 13 centimeters, my single fold cards like this, the base card layer is generally 12.5 by 10, 12.5 by 10 centimeters. Unless I'm putting a secondary mount on there. And if that's what I'm doing, then I reduce the size of the top card to 12 by 9.5. 9.5 by 12. That allows me to get in a second color as a under mat, and then I will place those on and onto the final card, which is 13 centimeters by 21 centimeters, to give them my bifold. All right, so in this case we're going to go with 12 centimeters by 9.5 centimeters. The next one will be 12.5 centimeters by 10 centimeters, and then our base card is the 13 by 21. All right. Hopefully that addresses that. I will get around to putting all of these measurements in on the transcript, but at this point in time, I think if I show you the technique that I use, then you can create an image or an object that suits your size. Okay, now let me tell you, this does get messy on your hands, but what's a bit of colour in your day? It's most important. So let's get we're going to use make autumnal colours, and for this technique I'm just going to use a dauber brush. In fact, I'll use a couple of dauber brushes for all the different colours I'm going to use, and make sure your dauber brushes are totally dry. I have used a slightly damp dauber brush and got a slightly different effect. Here's an example of where I've used these autumnal leaves. This is the sort of look we're going for. This here. This was on a Four Seasons card that I made, but we're going to go with this. So the reason I'm showing you that is because you need to determine what colors you're going to use for your autumnal leaves. And it goes without reason that you're going to need to have a red. So I'm going to use, in Stampin' Up! Language, I'm going to use Cajun Craze. Okay, what have I done there that's not compatible? Okay, so some Cajun Craze. We've got definitely some yellow. Bring that to the fore. And your green. Now you need some green because that's the colour that your leaf used to be. And so I've got Old Olive, Crushed Curry, and Cajun Craze. That might be sufficient. However, I do sometimes bring in Mango Melody as well, or I was going to say Pumpkin Pie, just to help finish off the look. But let's see how we go first. And I'm also going to show you, as I do this, I'm going to show you one other thing. Oh gosh, it's like Christmas. I'm giving you all this information. But don't let me overwhelm you. This will be a short process. Trust me. Let me have a look here. Yes. I'm going to cut out a couple of leaves using my trusty little friend here. And the reason I want to cut out some leaves is because sometimes your leaf needs a little bit more of a natural look to it. Let me show you what I mean. Just trying to find a bit of scrap paper, one that's not watercolour preferably. Oh dear, where is it? Okay. Let me just cut this. Here we go. All right, and so I want some leaves, and what I'll do, I'll take this, feed it in there. Don't really need any flowers, but I will take the leaves and those flowers. Let me just get you another couple. There we go. That's very loud. Okay, that's done. I want to show you what I do when the object has no, what do you call it, markings or indentation to identify what it is. I've got a simple process. You may or may not have employed it, but I'll just bring that to the party as well. All right, fast game's a good game, so let's get started. And what I won't show you everything I do in assembling this card, in assembling the card that we're going to make today, because it would be a long video at the way I work. So I might start the technique, show you what it looks like before, during and ending, and then I'll do that same approach with all the other elements, so you don't have to sit there and watch me color everything. And then we'll start to put it together. All right, so let's get started. And I always apply my softer color first. So in this case, it's going to be the yellow. Now, what I do, I tend to vigorously attack the paper with holding the center, and the center just gets the faintest touch of color. And what I might do is just dab it like that, so you can still see the graduation of color there. Stronger on the edges, lighter in the middle. Okay, there we go. Now that's yellow. So let's put that over there with its dauber, and let's bring out the green, the olive, old olive, and taking a fresh dauber, and I'm going to now apply some green to it. I'll also use this bit as my scrap paper. Okay, here we go. Now we're just, once again, along the edges, giving it a hard bit of vigorous coloration, and then the center is just a lighter element. Okay, so you can still see the yellow in there with the green. If you like, give it a bit more of a touch up on that yellow if you feel like you're losing it. Now notice I've still got a center part of my leaf which is less colored, if you like. So there's the yellow, there's the green. Now let's get the red in here. And I told you it was messy. Didn't realize we were going to get that messy that quickly. All right, now this is Cajun red. It's like a terracotta. So once again, applying to the edges quite vigorously, and getting, now that is quite a vigorous color. Yeah. Now for me, that's perfect. That's finished. I'm happy to call that a finished leaf. Okay. And I mean, it's becoming autumn. We're running into autumn now in the southern hemisphere. So we're going to see a bit of, we're going to see a lot of that here in Melbourne, because we have a lot of deciduous trees that turn that lose their leaves, all in my front yard actually. Let me show you this, but we're not going to use the yellow to start with. Let's start with the green and see what sort of an impact that has on the finished product. Okay, so same thing, center, leave that lighter. Now come in and attack it with our yellow and give that a good vigorous brush down. I wouldn't recommend you do this without gloves unless, or especially if you're going out that night, because, okay, don't mix them up in terms of your colors. Now, and I do it in my hand because I can bend it around and get the edges and give them a good hard coloring, if you like, and then I can move into the center. And that vigorousness that I'm using here just helps give it another totally different element. Okay, so it doesn't, what I'm showing you here, it doesn't really matter what color you start with. Just give it an uneven tone to all the, don't apply the same color thickness across the whole object. Now here's one, and what I'm going to do here, I'm going to bring in another color, and is an orange. Now that might supersede one of these other colors, and I might employ a lighter green, which is this one here, Pear Pizzazz. So I've brought in, what is it called? Pumpkin Pie is our orange, if you like. Now I can't get these mixed up. And the daubers, I'll create new daubers for these ones. And I'm also bringing in Pear Pizzazz, which is the green for this one. And just see what the colors look like. So even though they're the same color family, they're just of different tones. All right. So let's start with the orange and see what we get here. Okay, so it's definitely orange. This is the Pumpkin Pie. Okay, now, and notice when I'm applying the color with the dauber, I'm just touching it down and turning it. Now that's the orange. I'm going to go back and get some yellow into this, and you won't see a great deal of difference with that yellow coming in. However, oops, I've used the wrong brush, so what I was really using is the green, but hey, not to worry, because they're all going to appear on here eventually. And you can see how the yellow is coming. That could even be a suitably coloured autumnal leaf there. I will bring in a bit more green, the lighter green, just dropping down and twisting. And look at that. It's not as rich and dark, but that's what Mother Nature does to her leaves out there. They're all different tones. Okay, so we've got two going there. Why don't we give a red application a bit of a go and see how it looks. All right, get the base color on there, bit of daubing, and there you go. Look at that. All right, very uneven in application. I'm going to go in with the lighter green and see where that ends. There we go. So holding your finger down, running the dauber over your finger, and you're just, that's it, sweeping it across. Don't be too frightened of tearing it. The cardstock is very forgiving. All right, let's see what this yellow looks like with this. Now this green is the lighter green, and what I've done with this one is we've got an autumn leaf that is only probably just starting to turn, if you like. If we bring in a bit of orange, what does that look like? And there you go. Okay, and there's another leaf there. All right, now I'm going to finish colouring these off whilst I'm off the air, or in a pause, so that you've got them all ready to go and you can see where I'm going with this. But just before I do that, I've got an old piece of foam mat here. Let's just get those out of the road. Now, remember how I said our leaf-shaped objects that don't have any indentations, veins, or anything like that. So this is what I do with them. I'm just wiping some of that ink off. Okay, I've got an old letter opener that I use. It's got a bit of a sharpish edge, rounded. It's not going to cut anyone. However, I do this first. I always use this foam mat, and I just create the veins myself. Randomly, I've got a vein in the center, and I'm just doing this. So 3 cuts on that side, and 3 vein cuts on this side. They don't need to be centered or anything like that, but just, okay. Can you see there, I've got veins, the center vein and that ready to go. And you can pinch the edges, and there you've got a nice shaped leaf. However, let's get some color onto that and see what that looks like. So we'll start off with, oops, let me get that away. Okay, now let's get, there you go, you can start to see some of the edges. Okay, all right, there you go. You can the veins are starting to come to the fore. I wouldn't re-ink any of these daubers at this stage. This is just a small leaf, and you don't want any one colour being more dominant than the other. You just want it to give it that autumnal feel. Here's a bit of green coming into the picture, and I think you're starting to see the makings of an autumn leaf. There you go, a deciduous autumn leaf at that. See that? Okay, so there's an example of what I do when I don't have any veins. I'll pinch the edge after I've finished colouring it and place that accordingly. Let's just do one more of those. I find putting in the veins prior to the colouring gives me better definition, because you're not actually getting right into the depth of the veins, you're not filling up those veins with ink that you're about to apply, which is great. Okay, so nice and firm there, and then creating our veins. Now, if you want to change the style of leaf that it is and add extra veins, then fine. It's your project, and the likes of which you make the rules. Let me just get rid of that now and finish colouring this. So I'm going to start with green now. I'll add some light colouring in there into the centre, and here we go. Okay, that's good. Some red. Not filling up the or topping up the ink in the dauber at this stage for such a small element. And see there, after 2 applications, we can start to see that there is the semblance of an autumn leaf. Let's just see. There we go. Look at that, beautiful. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm going to finish that off, and I'll come back to you very shortly. All right, now we've coloured up our stash of leaves, and now what we need to do is create a vehicle to put our project onto. And the vision I have is we're going to create a some background vision, like this as an example. We'll stamp some images in the background that are synonymous, that's a hard word, with our leaves. And I'm thinking that could be some grass and foliage, and I'm thinking of this set here. I don't know if these are deciduous trees or not, but you know what? I'm going to include them into our thing. This is the grass setting I'm thinking of here. So a couple of these trees sitting in amongst that if they're tall enough. However, and then we're going to do put some borders here, and I'm thinking this sort of image. That's difficult to see, but what I'm going to quickly do is I'll show you how I set this up. So I need my trusty Stampin' Buddy because what we need to do is bring this to the fore, and this is around the bend, and I'm going to be using this set here, and I've cut it using this die set, as you can see there, to give me these beveled edges or scalloped edges. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the stamping process to it, but I need to do it so that I can't trust myself to get it right with just one stamp. So I need to use our friend here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm lining up these scalloped edges with these dots, but not only that, I've also got to line it up with the shape of, there's not a great bevel in there, but there's enough of a bevel that means that shape will fit these dots somewhere along here. That's my thinking. And we're just about there. I would say we're just about there. You should be able to see poking through that these little white caps, and they should line up with the dots. And they do now. And if you can't see it, trust me, they do line up. Okay, and then what I do is I move the edge of that, just to hide those little scalloped edges. So just to hide those so I can't see them. Now I've got my magnet in place. I'm bringing down the lid, and there we go. Right, now the color that I want to use on this card, the predominant color, given I've got these autumnal colors here, I'm going to go with a I think I'm going to go with a copper clay. You know, it's difficult when you've got, yes, I think that might be fine. Yes, I'll go with the copper clay. It is difficult knowing which color to choose. I find it's difficult. In fact, I find it sometimes overwhelming to know which color combination to use. And I've got over, I think, 75 different Stampin' Up colors. I mean, you're bound to fall into a heap and take yourself to your room with your vapors and ponder the query of what color would look best for your project. However, I'm going to show you what I do a little later on to give you a sense of, well, just to give you what I do and nothing more. So that copper clay has an autumnal look to it, and it's in the right position, it lines, great. Okay, and so that will go into that like so. Now I'm going to think about using this other piece with the same pattern effect, if you like. Let me just clear that off before I re-stamp this. Now, if you have to do multiple lots of stamping, this, I don't even know what Stampin' Up call it. Stamping Buddy, I don't know. Whatever it's called, you need it. I didn't know I needed it until I saw someone doing this after I'd already tried to stamp my project, and I was mucking it up all the time. Okay, so here we go. Are our dots aligned? They look to be. Is the slope of the thing good? Yes, it is. Okay, just hide that edge. It's just hidden. Okay, let's move the magnet further into place. Shut that down. There we go. Okay, and a stamp pad, and here it is. Just needs a couple of touches, and there we go. Press gently, open up the lid. Is there enough? Yes, I think there is. But if there wasn't, then you could just apply a bit more color, shut the lid again, and touch it up. If you're doing this by hand, you touch once, it's still not enough. There is no way you're going to be able to double touch without it moving to a different spot. That's what I've found, and that's why I use this religiously for some projects. Okay, let me just get that out of the road for you, and we'll go to the next step. And that next step is getting rid of this. Okay, right. Now, let's bring in the grass element. Let's say we've got that, and let's say we've got these trees. I think those trees are too small for this. I'm going to put this away. Copper over here. All right. So if I do the grass here, no, trees are too small. I need to find another tree. Just bear with me, and that other tree stamp could very well be Okay, now I've found the stamp set. I'm going to use this tree stamp from Campology. This is certainly a retired set, but if you look at it, you see they're mostly pine trees. Now, pine trees aren't deciduous. However, I'm going to use a bit of poetic or crafter's license, and I'm going to stamp that. But I don't want to have it stamped straight onto there. I want to see what... I want to use a secondary stamp in the process. So here's the first one. Okay, that's pretty light. All right, it's going to give me a very faint image in the background anyway, so I'm pleased about that. And this is going onto watercolor paper, so it's going to be lightish anyway. So now that I've tested whether I can use the primary or secondary, I'm just going to check that one more time. Yes, okay. So I'm just going to go with a secondary stamp and make sure I line this up to see how far up it needs to be. That would give us sufficient there. So I'm going to stamp it about here. Okay, let's see how that goes. Touch it off, secondary stamp, and let's get on to that there. Beautiful. So you can see in the background that there is a treescape of sorts. Very faint, but that's good. And then my thinking is this. I'm going to, if I go ahead with that second one there, to be confirmed. And do I want to put those grasses in there? Because that's quite a low distance down there. I'm going to just going to ink this up. Okay, that's pretty light. And I'm just going to apply these here. There we go. So that if we've got, if I need something in the foreground just to cover up that there, I've more or less got that with this. Okay. All right. Now, let's get our leaves into play. And really, applying these is really just a matter of positioning. But before I do that, I do want to try one other thing. I'm going to give this a bit of colour in the background. And I'm just going to get some crumb cake, and I'm going to give that a bit of a colour on the card. And you will see that this is a beautiful medium in which to apply some colour. And I like it in the sense that it's not even all over the cardstock. So we've got some white elements in here. All right, there we go. That just adds another dimension to that. Checking to see what looks best at all times. Okay, there, we've got some colour there in the background. That's good. Now, one other thing, as we do the placement, I always am looking for height and texture. We've got the texture with these leaves. Now we need height. And how I do that is by curling the elements, e.g. like this. I don't know if there's a right and a wrong way, but you will see that most of my artifacts, nothing ever sits flat. I'll show you an extreme example of something I've just done. This one here. Look at the elements in this. Look how high they stand. What I've done is I've created these little gift boxes that you can insert your cards into so that you don't get any crush when you give these away. I can show you that in another video actually, but it won't be today. All right. So height and texture, my big things. All right, so all I'm doing here is just looking at how many elements I need. We're going for an autumnal set. We don't really want to hide the trees too much, in a sense of we want to keep them there, but not totally expose them. And we're just looking at what we can do here in terms of placement. Put something down there. So what we're creating really is a autumnal card with elements from the forest. We might even put our little leaf in there. And we've got our little, what are these things? Pods of sorts. And that comes up nicely. We've got an acorn here. All right, so what I'll do is I'll start making the placement and then I'll come back to you when it's all ready to go. All right, and then we'll put on the various other layers and the sentiment. All right, I'll be back shortly. Now I'm back, and I did say that I was going to stamp one of the trees from this set onto the card and then build the leaves around it. Well, that for me became a little uninteresting as I was doing the process off air. So I've come up with a new idea, and this is the beauty of crafting. I've taken this stamp set, or die set if you like, and I'm using it here. And this is my thinking. Here we go. We've got trees. We have got like this and something like that. Beautiful. And we can build around like this. And this is my thinking here. All right, and we'll build it up. It looks like an autumnal set. I might dispense with that because I might need a bit more room to tumble the leaves down to give us that autumnal set, if you like. I don't want to overcrowd it, and this might just detract too much from it. So this is my thinking in terms of our set and look. I'm going to do I'll put the sentiment in here on this piece, and we'll and we've got our card finished, something like that. Okay, so let's compile that now. And before I do that, I just want to get an effective stamp set out that I can use for that. And I want something a little expressive, and I'm going to see what sits here. And under Bamboo Beauty here, I think this will be good if I can get it to fit. Fit that way. No, it's got to fit this way. And look, I don't mind things being on an angle. That'll be good. Let's just get our trusty stamping set back out. I've got to... let's just bring this over. Now, even for doing a sentiment, it sometimes requires this to come to the party. Now, do I put it there or do I put it here? I think there will make better, easier reading. Now, I've just re-inked this and it might be very wet. So let me just get a piece of paper and see. Bit of scrap cardstock. Let's just see what this looks like first. Okay, it's there. Let's ink it up. It's very wet. In fact, it might be too wet. Sorry about that. Okay, see what that looks like. Okay, it just needs to be... Okay, let's bring that over. Is that in a good position? Let's see. All right. Just very gently touch that. Okay, that's the last one it's going to get. All right, that will do. I don't want to tempt fate. It's not totally smooth and even, but hey, it'll do. All right, let's get rid of that. Put that over for washing, and here we go. All right, the only other thing I have to do before I put the leaves on is give it a bit of a burnish. Let's just do that. Okay. Yep, okay. There you go, that will be sufficient, I think. That's great. And that one will go there. Okay, that will be hidden by this to a degree. Excellent. All right, and that one will be open. So let's get some glue onto this. And where's my glue? What have I done? Oh, actually, I need a new glue stick. I think I've got one here. All right, so let's get some glue down onto this. Now, just the faintest amount scattered amongst the branches here. Another way of doing this is getting a sponge, just a small piece of sponge, and putting the glue on that, and then applying the glue to the underside of the image using the sponge as the applicator. That's another way of getting a really nice smooth finish. Okay. All right. Now this one is not going to have anything to hide its sins. Like that one's just a little bit too high, but we're not going to see that because of... Okay. All right. And there's the glue, lightly touched to that. No ink, no. There. Bring that down to there. And voila. Okay. Now, this is something that I just detest. These little glue spots. Okay, and you can get most of them off with a earbud Q-tip. Like so. And a good way, if you get a shine, especially on dark card, you can use your embossing buddy to just dab it, and that's got some powder in it that can hide some of those sins. All right, and I should let that dry first, but anyway, let's just take those off. Excellent. All right, and we bring our piece to the fore here, and that will go there. Let's get some glue on that. Okay, that will go there. All right, it's starting to look quite good. Now we're just going to dress it. Now the first thing I said I was going to put on there was this, so let's get these on. A little bit of glue there, and up the stalk. Okay. There we go, that's one there. And do I want two of those, or do I want to have an acorn? Let's have an acorn. And where's my glue? Here we go. All right, just the smallest amount there. And we put our acorn on. Great. All right. Now, the important part is how do we get our leaves on here? Now, I'm going to show you what I do to get my height for leaves and things like that after I've curled them. And it's this. I use these little things. Now, what I do is I put them on those parts of the leaf that are going to come into contact with the cardstock, and e.g. like this, there and there, and that's how you manage to keep the height and texture. In this one here, we might just put one, maybe just for security, put two up there. Okay, take these off, and right, like so. There we go, a little bit of a fold up. Now, a big leaf as such, this will require a couple of placements. There we go, one there, one here, and one here. Okay, so we've got that, and this one. Here we go, and here, here, and here. All right, and that's the approach we take for the leaves and such. All right, so I'm not going to make you sit through and watch all of this. Let me get this into the finishing stages, and we'll come back to you. Like so. We've got this here, and we've got a leaf down here somewhere. Anyway, all right, I'll finish that off and I'll come back to you. Okay, so that is finished. Here's our card. the output of the project is autumn leaves, if you like, and we've got a lot of height and texture in there, and on the inside we've got a couple of remnants from the forced piece. But there's an example of colouring leaves, and in this case autumn leaves, giving them those spectacular colours, and not using the blender, but using simply the dauber to get that colour and texture into our project. And you can see that we've also used the dauber for the tree branches and the birds. And because it's not an even colour, in the sense that we're just pressing down and working it around, you have tones, dark tones, light tones, which adds to the reality of it, if you like. All right, so that's our first in the series of colouring. And what we'll do next time, I'm believing, is we're going to, I'm just finding the elements. What I'm going to do at the next session is colouring flowers, using a tricolour of flowers to create, and here's an example of that there. And what we're going to do is show you how I do that. I'm going to use a number of elements in that, and we're going to create a retro postcard, if you like, and we're going to do it on plain cardstock as opposed to the watercolor paper that we use on this project. And I'm going to use this as our main feature of the project, and we're going to give it this sort of a look, and we'll keep our silhouette for another occasion. But yes, we're going to take those elements, if you like, and bring them into this, and then we're going to stitch it to give it an old-fashioned look like what we've done here. All right, I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed that, but most importantly, I hope to see you next time on Michael's Card Art. Thank you for stopping by.